NASCAR is back, and Brian and I are back to preview this week's race, the Cookout 400, as NASCAR goes to Richmond for trip number 2. Olympics are going to be over here soon, and that means Cup racing is back. We'll talk the betting odds. We'll talk hopefully some values we can find. All that and more on today's Angle of Pursuit podcast.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining, we regrouped last week to talk a little futures. We even did some drafts based on odds, which was really fun, but it's good to be back into the normal schedule, back in the normal rotation. We have a race on Sunday. We have qualifying on Saturday. And we have odds to discuss. Well, yeah, I mean, who knows? We were talking about your potential plans, and with NASCAR and racing, even when it takes 2 weeks off and comes back, the rain still manages to find a way to get to wherever there happen to be. So we'll probably get rained out for Marty Monday or something. But how's everything going? Are you ready for the Cookout 400 and get back to our winning ways?
Yeah, I am ecstatic to be back grinding, handicapping, looking at odds. Excited to get back to the track, to a place that we saw earlier in the year. We should have had a Marty party, or we could have had a Marty party, and Denny Hamlin supposedly jumped the restart at blah, blah, blah. The odds are very indicative of what we saw the first time that we were here, which I think might be a little bit of a mistake by the sports books, because there's been a lot of changes from a team perspective, from a driver perspective, since the last time we were in Richmond. And there is that possibility of the friggin' rain with that hurricane, whatever the heck it's called, remnants hitting that area of the country, sometime on Thursday, Friday, with the remnants sticking around on Saturday. So who knows if the field gets set by current standings and the metric and all that stuff. So yeah, just excited to be back.
Me too. Let's look at some odds. As I mentioned last week, Brian and I got together. We talked some futures, and we also took a quick look at the betting odds. Brian and I each have a couple bets on there. I took William Byron at 16, as did Brian. I took Josh Berry at 30. I actually got it at 40. Brian got it at 50. He's now as short as like 20 some places. So happy we locked that in when we did. Brian also bet Tyler Reddick, because of course he did. Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, Kyle Larson are your top 4 over on BetMGM. It's basically the same, and then kind of a big drop off. Obviously, at this point, there's a clear top 4, and then everybody else. We talked a little bit about it last week, but are you getting more interested at betting one of these guys, or are you just gonna kind of I don't know, like be willing to be patient still and wait for the best number to show up?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the top of the board and you got 3 JGR cars with Kyle Larson mixed in there, I think this is a great week to just bet like winning team JGR. I think you can still get that at like plus 115 or plus 125 at some places. Just because if you're gonna give me 3 of the 4 shortest odds with plus money, and it's now shorter than that.
Minus 115. Woof.
Yeah, like if you could still get plus money on a JGR team win, I don't hate going to that. So that way you lock in Denny, Bell, and Martin Truex Jr. and the possibility of Ty Gibbs popping. I mean, there's been a lot of optimism with Ty this year, and that's rightfully so. He's shown up to tracks really fast. I don't think anything's going to be different, as we've just had essentially 3 weeks off from looking at this stuff with NASCAR. So it's just hard to get to these guys at such short numbers when there's that many of them within 7-1, 5-1, because not all of them are going to look fantastic in practice and qualifying. There's going to be some deviation there. The only one that I am interested in betting individually has got to be Kyle Larson. Like anytime you're going to give me over 5-1 at this point in the year, I think that's probably a good bet for him. And, unfortunately for those people who aren't inside in Las Vegas or myself, because I'm not there this weekend, you can still get Kyle Larson at 8-1 there. So like at Superbook, that is, by the way.
Yeah,
And they,
Superbook's doing some wild stuff now that they're closing all the other properties. They're just throwing numbers up to see what happens.
yeah, so fortunately that sucks. And at 8-1, like believe me, I'd be hammering the hell out of that. At 6.5-1, I don't hate that either. I mean, Kyle Larson's possibly the best. He's of the handful of best drivers to be considered in the sport. So he's the only one I'm looking at in these single digits right now.
Yeah,
As
I
a
mean,
single.
we talked a little bit about how things have changed a little bit, but Larson was the second best car in the win the races true performance rankings in Richmond one. Larson's been awesome, obviously coming off of a win, so there's a lot to like there. When you're giving me the fourth or fifth best odds, like I should be scooping that all day.
And also, real quick too, like people got to remember, we had this long break, so teams had all this time to go back and analyze what they did right, what they did wrong at Richmond, or what
Yeah.
they've been doing right or wrong leading into this. And we only have a handful of races before the playoffs start, so it's no longer time to lollygag. It's time to get into playoff mood, and this is when the big boys show up.
Yep. Yep. The next range is where things get a little more interesting. So we have Logano at 10, Blaney at 12, Chase at 14, Busher at 16, Byron at 16 still, Keselowski at 18, Reddick at 18. And then you dip into like the 20s. Some interesting options. Obviously, Blaney, given his short, flat ability this year, winning at Iowa, coming so close at help me. Where do you
Yeah, where he ran
uh
out of gas.
no we just had it where we had the ticket and he got second
Oh, that was
place.
last week, Indianapolis. Yeah.
Indy, yeah. So it's like he's compelling. I've seen, there's numbers kind of all over the place. It's interesting to see him at 12, Chase at 14. The RFK boys, Busher being in front of Keselowski is kind of interesting. Obviously, Byron's still here. I guess who's jumping out to you from this range?
I mean, still, we talked about it early in the week, but you're going to give me 16-1 on William Byron, despite the struggles that the team had heading into the break. I'm going to take that all day, every day. If I hadn't bet it already, I'd be betting it right now, just because, again, what I just referenced, like it's crunch time now as we head into the playoffs, and teams need to start maneuvering themselves to be in a better spot heading into the round of 16. And, with this break, like guys have reset, and I think there's a legit possibility we come out and it's almost as if it's the beginning of the season again, and where William Byron was considered the race favorite. Chris Wormy was calling him the next coming of Jimmy Johnson. Like, so 16-1. I love that number there.
Yeah. I think he still remains a compelling option, and I know, like we talked about, he's been kind of up and down of late, but we're getting into the final stretch where Hendrick tends to turn it on, and we're getting good numbers, so we should be scooping them up and holding on to him while we can, because he's going to be down the final few races and into the playoffs 8-1, 10-1. So I'm happy to scoop it where I can. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking like I feel like we had this similar discussion during the future show, but like Logano is interesting, but he's also like the shortest of kind of this group. Even at like 12, I don't love him there, but he does kind of stand out. He was obviously pretty good here in the spring, but like what do we do with Joey? Like he's been so weird, but he also got a win, but maybe he shouldn't have got a win. Like where are you at with him, and like what would your number have to be before you're like, okay, I'm firing?
Yeah, so I think Joey should be priced more along the lines of what Chris Buescher and William Byron are. I don't really see a reason that he should be 10-1, even if he looked good earlier in the year at this track. I mean, there's a lot of guys who have looked good previously at other tracks and came out and fired off like shit. And, something we know with Logano, like if he doesn't really like his car, or they don't look good on Saturday in practice and qualifying, they're probably not going to be good on Sunday, and they're going to need to manufacture track position. And so I find it kind of awkward that he's priced shorter than his teammate Ryan Blaney, who has been head over heels better than the 22, and priced shorter than Brad Keselowski, who, despite his lack of wins, he has the same amount of victories as Joey Logano, and he's probably just as good as the 22 team is at manufacturing track position as well. So why would I bet 10-1 on Joey when I could get Brad at 18 or Blaney at 12?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I'm looking at Win the Race for their true performance rankings on short tracks, and obviously it mixes in some non-flat tracks, but it has Phoenix, it has Richmond 1, has Iowa. Keselowski's above Logano. Logano, yeah, but he also has that weird Phoenix 1 race. Outside of Phoenix 1, he's been pretty good. Where Brad's been fine. I don't know. I might side with Logano there. I get what you're saying. Give you the extra, give me the extra 6 points or whatever. But
Yeah, and I think that's the reason. Like, obviously, if they were just a head-to-head, same price, yeah, you're probably leaning Logano in that matchup. But when you're going to give me 8 points in this instance at Caesars, 18 versus 10, like, I'm going to bet 18 pre-flop, then bet 10 on a guy who, even if he qualifies on the pole, you're not going to see Logano jump into that 4 to 5 range. He's probably going to be
he'll
7
be
to 8.
850, 750, 850.
Yeah, and I would much rather bet that, knowing he's got a rocket ship and he looked great during practice, than touch it right now.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Like, if I gave you a head-to-head right now with Brad Keselowski's 8-1 and Joey Logano's plus 100, like, you would bet Brad Keselowski every day.
Oh yeah.
So that makes sense. Looking for some interesting values. Chase Elliott's actually been really good at shorter flatter and is trending in the right direction. Was great at Martinsville, great at Iowa, really solid at Richmond and New Hampshire. Obviously, a little bit different, but the short track nonetheless. Interesting to see if he can convert on Sunday. Hendrick's always tough because it's so easy to talk yourself into any of these guys, even freaking Alex Bowman, who has a win. And so you're like, you got to find the value. Obviously, Larson's giving us some value given where Elliott is, Byron is, but I don't know. It's interesting. Tyler Reddick's floated out a little bit to 18, kind of interesting, and then we start talking Ty Gibbs. Josh Berry's at 25. I know we got it at longer numbers. I bet it at 30. 25. Is that too far? Is 30 like kind of the breaking point? Or it's hard for me because I know we both got better numbers, so we kind of have to throw that out. Like, what should his true odds be? Like, should he be 16 or 18 up here, or is he kind of, because I don't think he's in Byron or even Reddick tier. Like, he's kind of he's SHR at the end of the day. Like, 25 feels like fine if you really want to bet it, but beyond there,
So
I can't get down.
I was just gonna say the only reason why I got down on Barry was because I did get it at 50 at our favorite offshore, and I think there's definitely some credence to this team is disbanding at the end of the season. Everybody already has their new roles outside of the rest of the team. Childers and Barry both have new gigs at the beginning of 2025. So I mean, obviously they're not just going to give up on the season, but how much attention and how much of their focus is going to be on the rest of this season in comparison to looking forward to what's coming next year? They're professionals and they're going to continue to show up and do their job, but I think there's definitely some weight that has to be added to that, and it has to be taken into account. And so even betting him at 30, I don't hate that, but at 25, I just can't get there with Barry.
Like, if he comes out and puts it on pole, what's he going to be, like 12 or 15? And at least at that point, he's incredibly fast, and you bet him at that point.
Yeah, and even if you got him live at some point, like say he qualifies 10th through 14th. He's in like rows 6 through 8, and then he shows early life. You could probably still get him at 10-1.
Yeah.
And, at least you waited to have it, and you didn't have a bad number where, say, they show up and they have freaking lead in the tires and they have no speed. That's at all.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was truly a numbers play at that point. Like he's obviously been good on shorter, flatter, and there's reason for optimism, but I don't know, there's definitely like a diminishing returns at some point. I'm trying to figure out because qualifying is scheduled for
Late afternoon on Saturday. I think it's like 4:30
Eastern.
Eastern practice.
4:30 practice, yeah, and then 5:35 qualifying. So it's going to be a late Saturday night for us. We'll have to see what we can do, but
it's going to be an extremely late Saturday night for me if I'm in Ohio.
Yeah. And then we don't race till 3:00 on Sunday, which is also interesting. 3:00 West Coast, 6:00 East Coast. I'm guessing there's Olympic final ceremonies or something that are eating up the morning shift.
Yeah,
so we'll see how that affects weather and if that actually makes things a little easier to get stuff in or what. Beyond, obviously, we have some interest in Barry, but at 25, it's hard to get there. Is there anybody that you think, okay, I could see myself betting them now, and then when we come back to talk Saturday night, they look good in practice, they qualified well, and their number has been slashed?
I mean, you already kind of hit on it, but Alex Bowman at 40,
Yeah.
if you were to ask me who I'd rather bet right now, him or Josh Berry, despite the 4 cars history at Richmond and Berry's strengths at tracks like this, I would much rather grab 40 on Alex Bowman, especially considering he started 2 of the last 3 Richmond races inside the top 5. This car has kind of come to life over the last month plus of racing that we had prior to the break. And again, I hit on both of these topics where this is when the big boys come to play and this is crunch time. And so this is when the 48 team is really going to start pushing for better finishes and wins and stuff like that as we head into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think depending on where you look, you might be able to find better numbers or worse numbers. It is kind of interesting that he's already locked into a spot. You don't have to worry about winning to get in, so maybe that gives him a little less reason to push it. Bubba was really good here in the spring. I know he's this isn't traditionally his forte, but he's improving a lot better. Is he a better head-to-head top 10 kind of bet than an outright bet, even at his extended price?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, as we transition, we look at matchups to see who he's matched up against. But yeah, I do think that Bubba could be an interesting play in matchups just simply because he's been pretty solid at these track types, and Toyota in general has been extremely fast. I mean, when you got 3 of the top 4 shortest odds all coming from that Toyota camp, there's something to be said about that entire garage showing up with speed. And I think that's a good way to actually play Bubba this week, as opposed to betting him in the outright market, which is so volatile, and even placements.
Yeah, and I think we've learned there is opportunity, obviously, to hit decent numbers, but when the things get really in the thick of things, and we're coming up on crunch time, betting the shorter, better drivers who've shown it all season is definitely the way to go. Should we be betting Hendrick at plus 180 against JGR? But given our optimism for Byron, obviously Larson's a great number. Almost 2-1. Like you could still bet JGR to win the race, even if it's at closer to even money or a slight like minus 110, minus 115, and then come back with Hendrick plus 180. Like, is there something there, or am I grasping at straws?
So this is an interesting debate. I don't hate that if you're of the mind that, say, it's going to be either JGR or Hendrick that wins the race. Obviously, I think this is a better play than just betting Hendrick to win, because Hendrick can finish ahead of them and some rando could win the race. That being said,
yeah, like Logano or Blaney could win. And
I was just going to say, but you can still get Chevy to win the race at plus 270 on Caesars itself. So if you're still banking on this being a JGR versus HMS race, just go bet Chevy winning manufacturer and then hedge it with a couple of like a Blaney outright or Logano if you may.
Yeah. No, I don't hate that at all. What about 2311 if we want to get some bubbly? I know you like Reddick. 2311 plus 130 against Brad and Busher.
That one's really tough, man, because as much as I love Tyler Reddick, I mean, at this point, my outright bets are for the feels unless I'm like extremely confident. Whereas RFK, they just have this knack for putting their cars in position. And had Chris Buescher not sustained 2 flat tires early on at Indianapolis, he's probably competing for a top 5, top 10, easy top 10 finish at the Brickyard. And so, these two teams are not that far off from each other when it comes to like this track in particular. So I don't know. It's probably an avoid for me. I'd probably just rather bet Reddick in like placement markets because his numbers floated out a little bit as opposed to betting the teams against each other.
I'm betting Kyle Larson over Denny Hamlin. I understand Hamlin's really good here, and JGR in general could dominate this race, but 165 for two drivers that are basically even, and Larson's arguably been better. I'll take that value all day.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I do think so. I'm glad that the matchup on the top here, Martin Truex Jr. versus Christopher Bell. Major news out of the 20 team camp is that his crew chief Adam Stevens sustained knee injuries that he required surgery to both knees. So he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. And so they're transitioning his current car chief to be his crew chief. So there's a lot of changes going on behind the, under the hood here for this team. And this is one of Truex's strongest tracks throughout his career. So I'm going to take the plus money with Marty here in this matchup.
Look at that alpha from Brian bringing the facts and information. And I will say this is an interesting matchup because depending on where you look, you may find different numbers. Our favorite offshore has MTJ as a favorite.
Yep.
So shop it if you find value. If you're like, fuck, I want Bell, I don't want Truex. Go shop it because you might be able to find Bell at a better number.
Yeah, and also too, I think something to be said about this is if you're betting larger sums of money and you're in this to win it, if you find matchups that are priced opposite at two different books, it doesn't matter what you can potentially win by betting one of these guys on the plus money side. Just max out both of the plus monies and take your incremental profit. Believe me, that is the path to staying in the green for an entire season.
It's not a terrible call. Bubba minus 140 versus Ross. I don't know if I trust Bubba that much.
So I'm glad you brought that up because Ross is somebody that we kind of faded heading into the break. Now, what type of improvement possibly are we going to see out of this team coming out?
No idea. Literally could not tell you. Trackhouse could win every race. They could win no races. They could be first place, 30th place. I literally have no idea.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting right now to see, and I think this might be a good week. Like if you think that they're going to find their groove, you got to jump on whatever leverage you got right now, because if he shows any type of speed, those discounted prices are going to be gone just because he's popular. He's shown it to be really good in the past. Ooh, kind of like Chase over Logano there.
Yeah, especially at minus 105.
Ooh, minus 130 though. I do like that matchup. I would take the Buescher side of that if it was minus 110. I know that's nitpicking at that point, but
yeah, which probably means we shouldn't bet it. But at plus 100, I'm gonna take that candy, especially since I have the outright sitting in my on my slip already.
Oh, so you're taking. Oh, Lordy. So you're taking the Barry side. Okay, so I went over to FanDuel real quick just to shop these lines here. I'm biting the bullet here, I guess. William Byron in a matchup against Ty Gibbs, -112. I am hammering that.
All right, let's go through these. So Larson's a dog to see Bell. I will take that. I guess I should be betting Kyle Larson to win the race if I'm fading all these guys if I'm fading JGR.
Yeah, but you got to find the number though. But again, just bet Chevy plus 270 because then you also include William Byron, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, who knows, Kyle Busch, he's probably a disaster again this week, but
Ross is -102. Blaney versus Logano.
I do like that Larson over Bell matchup. That's a pretty good find there.
Yeah. Yeah, plus money? Hell yeah. So you always got to shop at people, find the best numbers, look around, see what you can get yourself into.
Man, I'm gonna add that as well. Sorry. So
Fine.
definitely go bet Christopher Bell, everybody, because
he's gonna win the race for sure. Let's go to the Caesar Speakeasy and let's look at some manufacturers. So Larson's 125, Elliott's 350, Byron's 420, Chastain 10, Kyle Busch, no thank you. How are Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman the same price?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's name recognition, name value.
Yeah.
It's essentially the way they were pricing Chase Elliott last year.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Whoa, crazy. Let's go to Ford. Logano, Blaney, Busher. Is Barry at 750 worth a nibble?
No.
Austin Spindrick at 30?
Yeah, see, I don't hate that one. I'm just kidding. I'm not betting Austin. The only thing I would bet Cindric is if you found him like
you want to bet Cindric to
right?
win the championship, but you won't bet him to win Richmond or to win Ford, beat all the Fords at Richmond. That could be like 8th place.
No, it's only 30-1. I need like a massive number on any Cindric bet I'm making.
What about Bubba Wallace 22-1 to be the top Toyota? Or Reddick 12-1?
What is Bubba's like top 3 price?
Great question. I'd love to tell you.
He's 8-1 the top 3.
Yeah. So I can get 22, and that could be 4th. It could be 200 guys, Blaney, and whatever. But
let's think about this realistically. If
I don't like doing
Bubba's
that.
the top Toyota, where do you think he's finishing?
In the top 5. Maybe top 3.
So I'm looking at I'm just going to look at all the next gen races here. So the first race in 2023, it was all Chevys. And then the first Toyota was Christopher Bell in 4th. But outside of that, in 4 of the previous 5 next gen Richmond races, a Toyota has finished top 3 every single time.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's probably at minimum 4th or 5th, probably likely 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the Reddick one, because what is Reddick's top 3? Where the hell is Reddick?
It's probably smarter to bet Reddick top Toyota and Bubba to win the race. Just take that extra 15 points or 13 points.
I mean, to be quite honest with everybody, look, if Reddick top 10s here at Richmond, I think that's going to be a successful race for him because he's never had great success at this track. And believe me, I'm not falling over my skates to bet him in many markets this week, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Just again, I can't not have the outright on the board or on the card because if he wins and I'm not betting it, I'm going to be extremely sad.
Yeah. Is there any value in the top 10 market? Josh Berry minus 110 to top 10?
I like Alex Bowman. I don't hate the plus 140 spot.
Plus 140, that's not bad.
Yeah, just because he's been really good at qualifying at this track, and just again, HMS in general always kind of has speed.
Yeah, and he's trending in the right direction. Where if he top tens, like he didn't have that great a race, but
Yeah.
he could be solid.
Now he's plus 150 at Bet365. Bubba is plus 175 at Bet365
To top 10?
to top 10. Yes.
I don't hate that.
Yeah, I don't hate that number. That being said, I mean, how often in prior years had we ever even considered a plus 175 spot a good number for Bubba Wallace at a top 10?
And I feel like as fun as these numbers sound, at the end of the day, the top 10 is going to be pretty chalky. Maybe one or two names sneak in there. So if you want to find a Todd Gilliland or Bubba Wallace or somebody to sneak in, maybe. But
Yeah,
like,
I'm gonna add the Bowman number.
I think that's a good bet.
Yeah, plus 150. I mean, he started the last 4 Richmond races 15th or better, and 3 of them are top 5 starts. And so if that's the case, he looks good in practice, he qualifies decently. This number is probably even at best.
Yeah.
Post practice and qualifying. And again, too, you have to factor in because he does have a win, they might be a little bit safer and play this to where they just need to get a good finish. And so they're going to be less risky and they're going to finish 6th or 7th just out of being cautious.
Yeah, I think finding some matchups with Bowman against way riskier guys might be the way to play him this week.
Yeah, because especially I think we only have 4 races left in the regular season. And so it's time now for guys that don't have wins or are below the cut line start getting a little risky, which
how crazy is that sentence, by the way?
Let me just say it's very saddening because I didn't realize how much of my time, of my free time, is taken up by just looking at NASCAR numbers, handicapping prices, shopping lines, and just looking at NASCAR news until this last couple of weeks where we didn't have anything to handicap or shop.
Yeah, like that first week was really nice, especially because college football just came out, so I was able to kind of reshuffle my time around a little bit. But boy, did the last week, like especially after talking futures, so I'm like, man, I want to get back in the rhythm again.
Yeah. I mean, again, I've said this a couple of times before on the show, but never in my life did I ever imagine myself being this enamored with cars driving fast in circles and sometimes making rights.
Yep. What else do you want to look at? Is there anything else? Obviously, we didn't have our, we already recapped, the last race and we talked about our wins and our losses and our DraftKings. So a lot of that's out the windows. This can be a little bit shorter of a show, but is there other odds or any other books I should check for head-to-heads to try and find some value? Is there anyone you're trying to find an opportunity to bet, but you haven't really figured it out yet? Like, where's your head at?
Yeah, so I'm really high on Chris Buescher coming in this week because, again, like I said, he didn't have the greatest finish at Indianapolis, but that car was a rocket. Like he had true long run speed, and if it wasn't for those flat tires, I am convinced that he's within shouting distance of a top 5, potentially competing for a win. Who knows? So Buescher's a guy who I'm looking to try to bet. The books opened him a little bit shorter than I had anticipated. I would have liked to have seen like 20 instead of the 16 or 18, which is kind of where he's being priced at currently. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he is one of the guys battling for a playoff spot. So he's right on that cut line. And so this team is going to have to get aggressive with their moves to get playoff points or get just really strong finishing results and possibly just get a win. So that way they can lock themselves into the playoffs. And Richmond is a place that he's won at before. So, I don't mind taking a shot at him and that team. Or if they open up, when they open up like stage winners, I think Busher is somebody to watch out for because they might be hunting points to try to increase their lead or jump somebody in the playoff rankings.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, which makes me a little worried to target him in head-to-heads, given he's going to be pushing if he has a chance, and he's also maybe doing some different stuff to get stage points, to get different things. So he feels a little more risky than most weeks just because of all those factors. Like, are you on board with like kind of not really loving him in head-to-head markets, or do you think he'll be good enough regardless of how they kind of play it that it'll be fine to target him there too?
Yeah, it depends on what the matchup is going to be. Like obviously you said it with
Josh Berry.
Yeah, with Josh Berry, like obviously I think Berry offers a lot more risk just because they're going to be checkers or wreckers because at this point in the season they don't really give a shit if they have a DNF, if they can go for a win. That being said, if you can find Busher against somebody who is kind of locked into the playoffs and is also going to be checkers or wreckers at a decent long number, like say it's him versus Logano, I would rather take the plus money on Busher just because Logano is going to do everything in his power to try to win, which has resulted in many wrecks in his case. And Busher, in the meantime, is probably just going to hang back and then wait for the very end of a race to do stuff like that. So, yeah, I like him in placement markets a little bit better just because I know he has to get good results. So stage winner and then like top 10, if you can get a decent number, I like those on Busher this week.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more pessimistic, but I think I understand where you're coming from for sure. Should we recap our card, give the people our kind of thoughts, and then get out of here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Trying to keep ourselves wrangled in. We'll see how the week goes, and come Sunday morning, you'll get to see the full card. Make sure you are subscribed to the Substack, AOP Podcast at Substack.com. It gives you our full betting card, extra picks, extra DFS thoughts, all that for free every race day in your email inbox. As a reminder, it is every race day, as in a couple weeks Daytona will be on a Saturday night, so our whole schedule will be off a little bit, but we'll make sure you guys still get all of your content. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. It is helpful. We are continuing to push, even though we got over 1,000. We appreciate everybody who has hopped on and subscribed. Make sure you smash the like button. Leave a comment if you have some thoughts on who's going to win the race. If you find any favorite bets, Brian and I are always on the search for value. So if you find stuff you really like, definitely throw it in the comments. We love to see what you guys are betting, who you're interested in this week, and who you're fading. So I have Byron and Barry from last week. I have 16 and 30. I had a Larson over Hamlin because he's plus 165. I had a Barry over Busher plus 100. I think Barry is going to be really solid, and Larson over Seabell at minus 102. Haven't added the Larson outright. Haven't added a Hendrick outright. Haven't added JGR to win the race. Those are kind of ones I'm kicking around. Haven't bet any of them yet. Brian has Byron and Reddick from before. He has Larson over Bell, Truex over Bell, Byron over Gibbs, Bowman to top 10, and Busher as top Ford, 475. Don't hate that. Almost 5-1 on a guy that Brian is clearly very high on. And he's betting Chevy to win. This is real-time ads, folks. Get in while you fit in. Brian Twining, thoughts on your card? Any bets jumping out above the rest for you?
Yeah, I really like the Truex over Bell matchup just because with Bell clearly established in the playoffs, I don't think this team is going to be too frisky, especially with all the changes that are happening at the top of the pit box. There's probably going to be some growing pains this first weekend. I mean, obviously, all these guys know each other. It's not like they're taking somebody from a different team to help crew chief, but there is something to be said about a rapport that a driver and his crew chief have. And, Martin Truex Jr., probably the best car here in the spring. I mean, he led over 230 laps at this race. And so by all intents and purposes, he should have won the race. And you're going to give me plus 130 on a guy in the same equipment who has a tremendous history at this track against a driver who has seen a bunch of changes coming out of the break. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite as we stand right now.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that number has wild juice depending on where you look at it. So make sure you find the best number, as betting NASCAR can be challenging for sure. So, Brian, I like where your head's at. I like getting Larson at better than even money. So getting him against Bell at minus 102, I like a lot. And then obviously Denny's scary. Denny could easily lap the field, win the race, and make me look stupid. But getting almost 2-1 on him feels nice. So I will happily take my juice with Larson and see if I can make it work. Brian, it was good to be back. It was good to talk Cookout 400. It will be good to recap late Saturday night, probably. It'll be in your feed Sunday morning along with the newsletter, so make sure you subscribe to both. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.